BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned Dehan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned Dehan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Wednesday, and welcome to the special presentation of Black Box Online Radio. I am very eager to tell you that the book Down the Dark Lane, 3 Thrillers from the Motel is now available. It is a fictional work, and I've been wanting to talk to you guys about this for some time because in 2021 I released my first book, Killer on a White Horse, a story of the evening watchman, and this book was intended to be a follow-up. And originally, I was just going to release the first half of the book, Killer on a White Horse, to anyone who hadn't read it yet, and maybe use it as something that was a little bit promotional. But, in the way that creativity seems to work, I thought of a sequel story that could really continue my first novel. And there are 3 different stories in here, but the final one is called The Barry Albert Tapes, and it's a sequel to Killer on a White Horse. And if you haven't read Killer on a White Horse first, I highly recommend it, because that will tie into everything in Down the Dark Lane. Down the Dark Lane is something that I actually began in 2009. I was really trying to think about it because I was working on a particular novella that is the first story in the book, and the original manuscript was absolutely lost to time. Lost in time, perhaps, or lost to the test of time, so to speak. And then in 2010, I wrote a story that was completed, a novella, but again, it was about 110 pages, thereabouts, called Green Green Charlie. And I wanted to go with the whole theme of color, and I was going to release those 2 together as my first book, and it was going to be called Amanda Black and White and Green Green Charlie, the stories of 2 people who are experiencing a lot of not only mental duress, but trying to find their own place in the world, as well as trying to understand what drives other people to commit crimes. And they are unrelated stories, but I have a few ideas on how to tie all of them together. But the honest answer is I lost the original manuscript to Amanda Black and White, and it was never even completed. So back in 2021, in the fall of last year, I started writing a recreation. It's based on elements of the same story, but I decided to do an absolutely new angle on it. And if you do read it, you'll probably see how it was one story originally and then reshaped into a new one. And the main character in that is named Amanda. Her name is actually Amanda Livingston, and I didn't reveal that in the first story. I wrote a second piece about her, and that was my entry for the 3-day novel contest. Yes, you write a novel in 3 days, and I've done that twice, actually. It's meant to be done over Labor Day weekend. I did that in, I think, 2009 and 10. And the long story short is, I think that there's a future book in the works involving that particular character, Amanda, also known as Mandy, because it deals a lot with states of being, and I'm really tempted to throw it into a world of the paranormal because that's the way that the second novel really was. It dealt with a lot of things that were just beyond this world. And it's not so much about like wizards and spell casting, that type of paranormal, like what people would think of as magic. And it's also not about things like ghosts, even. It's literally about different states of being and how different dimensions could exist, but done in a very, very borderline spiritual way. And this one person, Amanda Livingston, gets to experience all of that and learn about just the relationships between this universe and that universe, this dimension and that dimension. But that's all the follow-up stuff. It's only briefly mentioned in Down the Dark Lane, and Amanda's story is called The Open Road Shall Decide. Again, that's a completely original take on the subject that I began writing in 2021. And the second one is called Green Green Charlie, which provided a lot of the foundation of Killer on a White Horse. If you read both of them, you'll see about how I chose to rework elements of the storyline, and it wasn't for any objective or ambition. I just had an idea for a story, and believe it or not, the inspiration came from Roman Polanski, the filmmaker. I had a friend that I would hang out with on Thursday nights back when I was in college, and we would watch TV together in his dorm room. And he wanted to show me a movie. He said, I just watched The Ghostwriter by Roman Polanski, and we had several conversations about Roman Polanski's personal life versus his filmmaking. Lots of people do. I even have an episode about it here on Black Box Online Radio called Several Crimes of Roman Polanski, and I invite you to listen to that as well as like, subscribe, follow along with everything. But we watched the movie The Ghostwriter with Ewan McGregor and Pierce Brosnan, and I truly appreciated how that story started off very light and borderline comical. I mean, we were laughing out loud at some of the um, just lines that the characters were dropping, or the situational humor, and then it got darker and darker, like peeling away at layers at an onion, and it just getting to something more and more sinister. And I went home after hanging out with my friend. I thought, I have to write something like that. And that was the story Green Green Charlie that is featured in Down the Dark Lane. It's the second story in the book. And it was my attempt at doing something like that. And again, similar to Killer on a White Horse, there is a semi-autobiographical character and who is a lot like me, and he works at the front desk in a hotel, and I never worked a front desk job until earlier this year. That was all done from my imagination, but no, he tries to go on a brief vacation and things go horribly wrong. And again, I wanted it to start out in a particular way and end up in a different way. And it's also based on some real events that I experienced. But I have to say, in the first story, the main character, Amanda, is not based on me at all, really. She's actually based on somebody that I used to know. Not well, not firsthand, not firsthand, as someone whom I used to watch on YouTube, actually. And, I just thought about incorporating some elements of her life into a story, and I did. I wrote a very, very comedic story. I mean, only two people in the world would have found it funny. Me, I would be one of them, and the person that I sat next to in one of my English composition classes, who was, just another friend from college. We had that same type of humor. And the original story that I wrote was dark, twisted, but it was meant to deal with what some people would call black comedy. Not dark humor, but black humor. I mean, the stuff that makes you laugh, but also makes your bones rattle, so to speak. And then, after writing that, I was really quite curious, though, how I would repackage the story as something that was a drama, that was serious, that was meant to be genuinely appreciated, as opposed to just making a mockery of someone's life. And that's why I decided to write Amanda Black and White. And then that manuscript turned into the story featured in Down the Dark Lane, The Open Road Shall Decide. And there is a genuine sequel story to Killer on a White Horse, picking up where the first novel left off. And I think that some people will appreciate it, and there definitely are gonna. I mean, I could work more stories into the Killer on a White Horse timeline. It's just about choosing which creative pathway to explore first. The thing about Amanda and the States of Being, or continuing with the White Horse storyline, and even before that, I know the absolute next thing that I want to start writing, and that is some nonfiction. It's really the stuff that I talk to you guys about on Black Box Online Radio, and it's going to be all about criminal psychology. It's going to be a shorter piece, and something that I want to arrange in a very particular way, but I would like to release that, as soon as possible. I haven't written a single word. I mean, I really wanted to finish Down the Dark Lane first and put it out online on Amazon, and then I wanted to get started on the nonfiction one, which, because it's shorter, I will do that, and then get back to the world of fiction. I really have never done too much in the nonfiction world. I've tried to write memoirs and stuff like that, but again, that's just a first-person narrative. I think this, I am like this. It could just be as easily be a first-person limited novel, and I really wanted to do more with nonfiction in the future, but I'm a fiction writer. That's why I put out Killer on a White Horse. I entered that one into a fiction competition for Minotaur Books, and it was the first true crime novel competition meant for unpublished true crime writer, or not true crime, sorry, first unpublished crime novel, which is mostly murder mysteries. I said true crime, I made that mistake because it's a fiction competition. But no, I didn't win the first prize and I didn't get the $10,000. Oh well, so then I decided to release it on Amazon.com and talk to you guys about it. And now there is a sequel story to it in Down the Dark Lane. But a lot of people have pointed out how the main character in Killer on a White Horse is named Barry Albert, and he is semi-autobiographical. He is based a lot on me, but in the first novel, Barry Albert had a love interest named Joanna. Her full name is Joanna Skite, and she even says one line where it's that someone once told her that her last name is an Irish swear word, but she never bothered to look it up. What that's from is the song Monto, the Irish folk song. When Carrie told on Skin the Goat O'Donnell caught him on the boat, he wished he'd never been afloat, that dirty skite. So, that's not just made up. And you see, for some reason, I love doing this. I love just having sentences that might seem ordinary to some people, but to other people, if you get the reference, then it's going to be just a whole nother level of thoughtfulness. And they're almost like hidden references, but they would totally work if you didn't get them. Like if she just says that my name is an Irish swear word, but I never bothered to look it up to see if it was true or not. Well, okay, you could just leave it at that. But the reason why I created that character is because she is also a semi-autobiographical character. And I don't know how much I've talked about this on BBOR before, but I wrote a novel about her, Joanna Skite, and it was meant to be my life story, but from a woman's point of view, and a girl at the time, because I was much younger when I did that. That one has also been lost to time, lost in time, or to the test of time, however to phrase that. And again, it's just the events that I experienced, but the persona, the person dealing with it, is a female. Like, have you ever even wondered about that? Well, what would growing up have been like if I had been a girl? If you're like a boy, if you grew up as a girl, what would it have been like if you had grown up as a boy? That type of stuff. And no, that one no longer exists. But I could attempt to do some recreation, although in Killer on a White Horse, I do bring back some of Joanna's past, and I mean, it's just like a repackaging of a repackaging. So, as you see, these characters that show up in my fiction are not created exclusively for that. They're part of other stories that I worked with and finding ways to tie them in together. And I've definitely been curious about what would happen if I could just share them with you guys in the future because I know exactly how I would do it. And if you're going to spend the time to write 100 pages about something, you probably remember a few of the details, right? So I think that I could do some pretty solid recreations of the stories, but I meant it. I used to be a fiction writer. I mean, I guess I still am. I'm talking about releasing a book of fiction that I just wrote and just put online like 45 minutes ago. But like, it used to be the heart and soul of my identity. Like, perhaps from age 14 all the way to age 22 or 23, I thought of myself as a fiction writer. And I experienced something when I was 22, just like an overwhelming rush of creativity. And I would spend hours on the keyboard, on the laptop, just writing stories and attempting to write novels, writing something that's 200 pages long, and then I would just have no idea how to end it. And that's just what would happen. It would just turn into some type of thing that's a lost relic where I had an idea for a novel, but I didn't know how to end it. And an example of that would be Amanda Black and White, because I knew what I wanted to say. I knew exactly how I wanted to say it. And believe it or not, the original story, Amanda Black and White, I think is not exactly darker than the one that's in my new book, but it's definitely more saddening and more depressive because of how honest it was. It talks a lot about abuse and how people respond to that, and um, well, you'll find out more if you read the book Down the Dark Lane: Three Thrillers from the Motel. And I decided to use the word motel and link them together for that particular reason, just because of some of the similarities again between Green Green Charlie from 2010 and Killer on a White Horse in 2021. And bear in mind, I was originally just going to release the first half of Killer on a White Horse as a promotional piece in this book before I thought of the original story. And the main character in that one, Barry Albert, lives in a motel. And Green Green Charlie is all about a guy who is just, again, he's trying to go on a short vacation and everything goes wrong. Well, where do you stay on vacation? In a motel, right? And you'll see if you read the story. So I just noticed that particular commonality in an unexpected way. I mean, Charlie doesn't live in a motel. He is, well, he's a bit of a mess, so to speak, but he mostly did it to himself. You can read the story if you want to truly find out all the details. But there was this odd commonality that just happened that way. And the reason why Barry Albert lives in a motel in Killer on a White Horse is, yeah, he's also a little bit, um, not exactly unstable, just doesn't have the most solid life plans. And I also stayed in a motel in West Virginia once, and in the morning when I woke up and I was just sitting out on their front step and I was drinking coffee and I was looking at this gazebo and patio deck that they had, and I was like, wow, this place looks really nice. I wonder what it would be like to live here. And I started writing a novel about Barry Albert, about a guy who decides to move into a motel, and that one didn't go on for very long. I think I had like 11 or 12 chapters. Again, no idea how to end it. But that version of Barry Albert from Killer on a White Horse was a person who's trying to succeed as a political blogger and what maybe some people would call an influencer. But the problem is that blogging is a dying art and he doesn't get too much attention. So what he decided to do was to throw out some wild conspiracy theories to see if his website would get a little bit more traction. And then it turned out that the wild conspiracy theory turned out to be true. I mean, the wild conspiracy theory was something real. I mean, he's practically just guessing. He didn't know that. And he comes up with all these things about how a senator was using dirty money and such, and how she used blackmail to get into the Senate, and all of that turned out to be true. So then the senator is trying to silence him. And you can find pieces of that in Killer on a White Horse. Her name is Senator Elizabeth Tong, the youngest senator ever from the state of California. And she just turned out to be a very menacing character. No idea how to end the original manuscript. And so I decided to just put the pieces of that into my fiction for the competition. And it's a very brief segment in Killer on a White Horse. And I haven't even mentioned the Zodiac Killer. Yes, of course. The Zodiac was some of the foundation of Killer on a White Horse as well, particularly the Zodiac Manson connection, because I was talking to you guys about the Zodiac Killer on BlackBoxOnlineRadio, and I thought that this really would be a good novel. I don't believe the Zodiac Manson connection is real, but I thought that there was something that was so fascinating about how a cult leader personality could have masterminded a serial killer operation miles away from a distance from afar. And that's what I wanted to do with Killer on a White Horse, although I've never been part of a cult. And I really didn't want to push the boundaries of imagination too far. I wanted to write something that I knew about. And at the time, I was an evening watchman who worked the 4 to 12 shift outside of a warehouse. So I thought, this is the most ordinary job in the world. I just sit here and watch to make sure the place doesn't burn down. And it didn't. It didn't under my watch. Thank you very much. So I decided to turn this cult leader personality of Charles Manson into a rogue drifter who had three people that were following him. So he's not a cult leader, but again, he's just a persuasive and manipulative personality named Emmanuel Inman in Killer on a White Horse, and he's discussed a lot in the news story, the Barry Albert tapes, available in Down the Dark Lane. So I wanted to explore that as a novel, and there's this fiction competition that I've always wanted to do for maybe 10, 12 years. I thought about entering the fiction competition for the first crime novel, so I tried, and that's what I use. Some of my own life experiences, some things from a previous work of fiction, some things from the Zodiac Manson connection, and of course the character from the other story, my own autobiography, if I were a girl, so to speak. And that's the end result. So I think a lot of people who write fiction choose to do this. They just take their experiences and they attach different labels and personas to them. But I hope you guys will like Down the Dark Lane. I am sorry if there are some mistakes or errors. The editing process took months, and it's just something that I am not the best at. But I do want to point out that Amazon.com is a platform that can be used for publishing books. Both of my books are available on Amazon.com, but they are doing some tactics with manipulating pricing that I think are not very likable. And that's the reason why the book costs what it is because of some of the rules of Amazon.com. So in the future, I'm going to be looking at new ways to put out my writings, different platforms. And plus, Amazon.com does not need a monopoly on publishing, or a monopoly on bookstores, or a monopoly on just selling things. There always needs to be some type of alternative, or there should be some type of alternative. But just one final note on the book. There were two designs for the cover that I absolutely loved. One of them resembles the book Killer on a White Horse, and I thought that the first book that I did in the paperback version was very plain, and I wanted to keep going with that because some of you will remember the old episodes of Black Box Online Radio, where every day I would put out an episode. I would do it 7 days a week for around 20 minutes, and every day there would be a different color or design of the logo that said Black Box Online Radio, BlackBoxNet88 on Instagram, every day a different color. And I thought, I would like to keep that going on the books. And the first one, with Killer on a White Horse, is blue and red. This one is black and green, paying homage to Amanda Black and White and Green Green Charlie. But I chose to give the story a new title because I didn't want to have two things with white in the title, Killer on a White Horse and Amanda Black and White. So that's why it's called The Open Road Shall Decide. And in addition to this whole new paranormal novel that I could write about the main character, Amanda, there's even just room for a normal story about how The Open Road Shall Decide turns into a bigger story. I mean, it's hardly The Closed Road Shall Decide. Bad joke? Nah, let's go with it anyway. But I mean, I mean that very literally. Like, the story has things that can be carried on and used in different directions. So, there are going to be several things to look out for. Again, you can like, subscribe, follow along with Black Box Online Radio if you're into fiction and stories about the crime world in a fictitious way, the crime dramas, murder mysteries, and the White Horse killer mystery is turning into something that I have never really thought that it would be as big as it is, because I mean there's so many ways that I can expand upon it. But oh yeah, about the covers. I was talking about the covers. Yeah, there are two covers for the book. One of them is the Kindle cover, and the other one was one that I thought was just so fitting and appropriate that is used on the paperback version, and maybe the hardcover version too. And that's the one that has the lines going either up or down, depending on how you want to look at it. And I just thought it's called Down the Dark Lane, and I thought that that was another appropriate title. So one is the, I guess, the old-fashioned way, and one's the newer way. And I definitely invite people to purchase the Kindle version. You will save some money, but I know that you guys love paperbacks. From what you said about Killer on a White Horse, you said that you were really looking forward to the book in paperback. Numerous people said that. So yes, the paperback version will be available about 72 hours after this recording comes out. There's a link in the description box. You can also get it, Down the Dark Lane, 3 thrillers from the Motel. And there is just going to be a lot more coming out from me in the near future. And I think that there are a couple reasons why I want to continue the White Horse Killer story. One, because it's not done, but another reason is I find it amazingly entertaining to create on my own. I mean, I'm very engaged by it, and I like the feedback from what a lot of you said about how you wanted to hear more stories about the protagonist, Barry Albert, and you will get that in Down the Dark Lane. But there are angles with the Zodiac Killer mystery that have not been explored in Killer on a White Horse. I mean, definitely not a set of letters and cards and codes that go on for decades. I mean, when did the Zodiac Killer letters first start? What is it, July 31st of 1969? When did they end? 1974? 1981? 1990? 2001? I mean, all of those are possible answers. And I think that I really wanted to capture the problem-solving aspect and how some people enjoy the theorizing behind unsolved mysteries. And you will see that in Down the Dark Lane, the third story, the Barry Albert tapes. You will see that about how people like to guess around with things. And there's a lot of it in the original book, Killer on a White Horse, about how people like to put their mental energy to try and solve a murder mystery. But one thing that I did not do in Killer on the White Horse was very intentional, and that is that I didn't talk about the victims of the murders, just that people were murdered, and there's some very loose descriptions, but if I were to continue the story, I would have to talk about victims and who was actually killed. The reason why I did that was I didn't want anybody making any type of comment, oh yeah, that character's obviously based on Darlene Ferrin. I think that's an inappropriate way to talk about her. Or the same with Betty Lou Jensen or David Faraday. I really wanted it to be a work of fiction, and people aren't immediately going to throw in some criticism about the victims. I mean, about the people like Charles Manson, who, as I said, was the foundational source material for one of the characters. You say whatever you want about Charles Manson, and the character's based on him, but it's not even the real Charles Manson. All right, I mean, whatever happens to him happens to him. If some people think that's not the most respectful way to talk about Charles Manson, yeah, he was a terrible person, so that's all I would have to say in response. But on a more positive note, I invite any type of feedback that you guys have about fiction, or you want to talk about crime dramas, murder mysteries, crime novels, and let's do that in the comments section. And also, here's something to end on. The original title was going to be Down the Dark Lane, 3 Horrors from the Motel, because I wanted to write horror stories. I love the horror genre, and it's October now at the time of this recording. And I've been watching horror films. I was talking about the Halloween franchise on the last Anything Goes Friday segment. But I found that the stories just weren't that horrific. They dealt with some things like psychological drama more so than horror. So that's why I decided to change the title to 3 Thrillers from the Motel. And a lot of it is the characters are contemplating what is driving someone to commit the act of murder, and you'll see that throughout the stories. And one last time, the new book is called Down the Dark Lane, 3 Thrillers from the Motel. It is currently available in Kindle edition, although there's the obvious condition that the Kindle edition throws off all the page numbers. There are some things like the table of contents, but that gets changed. However, the paperback version will be coming soon. Thank you so much to everyone who has listened to this recording, and I will talk to you guys in the near future, and I will see you on Friday for the Anything Goes Friday segment. And of course, there is always BlackBoxNed88 over on Instagram, and I will see you there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.